Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. It was the last week of July, hot and humid in Lahore, the kind of heat that clings to your skin like something alive. My cousin Denial and I had spent most of the afternoon wandering around the packages mall, drinking cold sodas, wasting time before heading home. We were both bored, sweaty, and in that odd headspace where everything feels a little surreal, like you're walking through a dream, but you don't know it yet. We were headed toward the food court, arguing about whether to get fries or momos, when Denial suddenly stopped and pointed. Bro, look at that. Tucked between a dead phone repair kiosk and a broken claw machine was an old photo booth. One of those retro-looking things with a faded red curtain and a scratched-up mirror stuck to the side. The lights above it flickered weakly, and the air around it felt oddly cooler than the rest of the mall. It actually works? I asked. There was a soft buzzing hum, and a glowing green light above the coin slot blinked. Somehow, yeah, it worked. We laughed and decided to go for it. Why not? Take a few goofy photos, post one on Insta, and call it a day. We stepped inside. The inside smelled like old paper and damp fabric, like a storeroom no one had opened in years. The seat squeaked when we sat down, and the air felt thick, like we were breathing in something that didn't want to be disturbed. But we were idiots, full of sugar and boredom, and didn't think much of it. Denial hit the button. The countdown blinked. 3, 2, 1. Flash. We made faces, peace signs, stuck our tongues out. We laughed and slapped each other's arms, doing what cousins do when no one's watching. The booth flashed 4 times, each light a little dimmer than the last. After the final one, the machine whirred like an old printer waking up from a long nap, then began spitting out the photo strip. I pulled it out with a grin. That grin died the second I looked at it. For photos, in every single one, there was a third figure, standing directly behind us. The first thing I noticed was the height. It loomed over us, a shadowy figure, more smudged than man. But the longer I looked, the more details jumped out. Its face was completely black. No features, except for 2 sunken, hollow eyes. Not glowing, not white, just empty. But somehow, they were staring right into the camera, into us. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. A wave of cold washed over me, and for a second, I genuinely thought I was going to throw up. Denial saw my expression and leaned over. What? What is it? I handed him the strip. Watch his face go pale. He looked behind us instinctively. So did I. Nothing. But the air inside the booth felt different now. Heavier. Stiller. Like the moment just before an earthquake or a scream. Denial bolted out of the booth without a word. I followed, nearly tripping over the curtain. My legs felt like jelly. We went straight to the nearest security guard, a tired-looking man sitting on a stool near the escalators. We showed him the photo. I half expected him to laugh it off, but instead, he stared at the strip in silence. His eyes narrowed. Then he looked up at us, dead serious. You took this just now? Yes, I said. Why? He hesitated, then stood up. That booth's supposed to be closed. Hasn't been used in years. Power's been cut off. No one goes near it. Someone died in there. A kid. Back in 2009. What happened to him? Denial asked. The guard shrugged, uneasily. No one knows for sure. His body was found curled up inside. No signs of trauma, just dead. Booth was locked from the inside. They broke it open. Kid had this. He gestured to the strip, same look on his face. Fear, pure fear. And in the photo, the same shadow. I asked him if he was serious. He nodded. They tried to remove it. Booth powered up on its own. Maintenance guys quit. Mall owners just left it there. Figured no one would notice in that corner. We left. Just like that. Got out of the mall, got on Denial's bike, rode home in silence. I barely slept that night. Neither did he. The next morning, I checked the photo strip again. There were still 3 figures in it. But the shadow was different. Closer. The next week, Denial swore he saw someone standing at the end of his street at night. Said it was tall, unmoving, just watching. When he called out, it disappeared. We haven't gone back to that mall. We've told no one else. But I kept the strip. Don't ask me why. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe part of me still thought it was a sick joke. But sometimes, late at night, I take it out and look at it under the light. And every time, that figure, it's moved. Not much. Just a little. But it's getting closer to me, frame by frame. And I know, someday soon, it won't just be in the photo. Story 2. Back in 2016, I was a third-year university student in Islamabad, living off campus in one of those aging, crumbling apartment blocks that smell like damp carpet and forgotten dreams. It was cheap, dirt cheap, and I was broke, so I signed the lease without thinking twice. Small kitchen, single bedroom, mold and bathroom. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The first week was uneventful, unless you count the tap water tasting like rust and the flickering hallway lights that buzzed like dying bees. But around the 10th night, I started hearing something. It began subtly, just scratching sounds above the ceiling near my bed. At first, I chalked it up to rats or squirrels, maybe even a stray cat that had somehow climbed into the roof through the vents. Islamabad isn't exactly overrun with wildlife, but it wasn't impossible. The noise always started after 1 a.m. and lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Light scratching at first, like nails on old wood, then heavier thumps, followed by silence, as if something was crawling above me, and then just stopping. I told myself it was nothing. Then came the whispers. Not loud. Faint. So faint I couldn't make out words, only the presence of them. Like the tail end of a sentence, a breathy sigh. They came and went, soft and rhythmic, as if someone was talking to themselves, right above me. The whispers would always stop the moment I sat up in bed, and the ceiling would go quiet again like it was holding its breath. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress from studies, too much coffee, not enough sleep, but I started staying up to catch it. One night, I even turned off all the lights and lay in the dark, pretending to sleep with my phone recording beside me. While I played it back the next day, I heard something, a slow dragging sound, a grunt, and then, clear as day, a cough. That's when I knew it wasn't an animal. I told the landlord. He sent some lazy maintenance guy who knocked the ceiling once and said, "Nothing thereby," before leaving with a bored shrug. I didn't push it, but that night I didn't sleep. I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, stick in hand. Yeah, a stick, part of a broken mop I'd snapped in half. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, but I needed to know. The attic access was in my bedroom, a small wooden square with chipped white paint. I dragged the chair under it and stood up, my pulse racing like a war drum. When I pushed the panel up with the stick, something grabbed it. No warning, no build-up, just a sudden, jerking force. A hand clamped down on the stick and tried to pull it up. I let go and fell off the chair, crashing onto the floor, heart thudding so hard I thought it might burst. There was no sound, not a whisper, not a footstep, just silence. I didn't sleep that night. I left the light on, door locked, clutching a kitchen knife like a fool. I kept my eyes on the ceiling the entire time. At dawn, I went to the building manager's office, pale and shaking, and demanded they open the attic. He looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted his chai break, but he sent the same maintenance guy again. This time, I didn't take no for an answer. We dragged a ladder into my room. The guy went up reluctantly, flashlight in hand. He pushed the attic panel aside and poked his head in. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he cursed loudly and scrambled back down. He didn't explain, just told me to call the police. I did. When the officers arrived, they went up and took photos, then told me, very matter-of-factly, that someone had been living up there. They found old food wrappers, mostly expired chips and dry roti, torn blankets, and worst of all, photographs. Photos of me, sleeping, taken from above through the ceiling slats, using what looked like an old phone camera. There were at least 10 of them, all from different nights. Some were blurry, some too dark, but all clearly show me lying there, vulnerable, unaware. The attic had no other entrance, no back door, no other way out. Whoever had been up there had been living above me, crawling down only when I was away or maybe even while I was sleeping. The police searched the entire building but didn't find anyone. I moved out that same day. To this day, I don't know who it was. No one was arrested. No prints. No ID. Just leftover garbage and a few haunting photographs. The officers assumed it was a homeless squatter who'd found a way into the attic from the roof and had taken shelter during the winter. But I'm not so sure. Who takes the time to watch someone for weeks? To crawl across beams without ever being caught? To whisper above your bed for no reason? Sometimes I wonder if it was just a drifter. Other nights, I wonder if it's followed me. Because even now, years later, in a different city, sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, I still hear scratching. Story 3. I used to work the night shift at a petrol pump just off the highway near Okara. Nothing fancy, just a tin roof station with 2 pumps, a glass booth, and a flickering fluorescent light that always made a faint buzzing sound like it was whispering secrets in a dead language. We were open all night, 7 days a week. The owner didn't care who stopped by, as long as they paid and didn't cause trouble. Most nights were slow. A few trucks passing through, a drunk or 2 looking for cigarettes, sometimes a family on their way to Lahore, the kids asleep in the back seat. I liked the quiet. It gave me time to think. I went by Sonny there. Everyone called me that. Even the boss didn't know my real name. I prefer it that way. Left the past where it belonged, behind me. I wasn't hiding anything criminal, just life stuff. Pain, regret, people I didn't want to be anymore. Then he came. It was just after 3 a.m. I remember because the air had shifted, like the wind stopped breathing. No cars on the road. No sound but the faint hum of the lights above me and the chirp of some insect dying somewhere in the grass. I was leaning on the counter inside the booth, half asleep, when I saw him. A man, dressed in all white. A long, linen-like corda, loose pants, and no shoes. He didn't look dusty. No dirt on his clothes. Like he hadn't walked here, just appeared. His skin was pale, not in the way of illness, but like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes, they were black. Not just dark black. No whites. No light reflecting off them. Just voids. Two pits of absence. He didn't speak at first. Just stood by the pumps, staring directly at me. I stepped out of the booth. "Petrol?" I asked, forcing a smile. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Then he said my name. Not Sonny. My real name. The one I hadn't heard in years. The one only a handful of people still knew. It hit me like a punch to the chest. I froze. "What did you say?" His mouth curled into a soft, almost sad smile. "Not yet," he said. "Not yet what?" I asked, but he didn't answer. He just turned away and started walking. Not down the highway. Not to her car. He walked straight into the open field next to the pump, where the wild grass reached knee-high and jackals cried in the distance. No flashlight. No sound. Just his white figure fading into the dark like smoke dissolving in water. I didn't follow. I don't know why. Maybe because something inside me screamed don't. Like a voice, not mine, whispered from the back of my skull. Let him go. I barely slept the next morning. When I came in for the shift the next night, something felt off the moment I stepped out of the rickshaw. The air smelled like burnt metal, and there were no sounds. Not a single bird, dog, or distant motor. Then I saw the pump. The front of the booth had been smashed. Glass everywhere. One of the fuel hoses was sliced clean in half, the metal nozzle dangling like a severed hand. But what made my knees buckle wasn't the damage. It was what was written across the wall in thick, black oil. "You should have followed him." The words weren't scrawled like graffiti. They were precise. Sharp. Like someone had painted them with calm purpose. I couldn't stop staring at them. "You should have followed him." I kept hearing that line in my head all night, like it was stuck in a loop. A part of me started wondering, what would have happened if I had? Where would that field have taken me? At sunrise, I called the boss and quit. Told him someone had vandalized the place, and I wasn't sticking around to get blamed for it. He yelled, threatened to dock my pay. I didn't care. I never went back. Burned the uniform. Threw out the old notebook where I sometimes wrote my real name. But that wasn't the end. A week later, I woke up to find a piece of paper slid under my door. No footprints outside. No sign of forced entry. Just a single torn page from a notebook. My old notebook. The one I threw away. On it was a sketch. A field. My booth. And a man in white, standing in the grass, smiling. Beneath it was one sentence. "Some doors don't knock twice." I moved cities after that. Changed numbers. Changed jobs. I even stopped using Sonny. Thought maybe, if I buried myself deep enough into the noise of the world, he wouldn't find me again. But sometimes, usually around 3 a.m., I still wake up sweating. The image of those black eyes burned into my mind. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear the hum of those flickering lights again, even when the room is silent. Story 4. People in my village love to talk. They gossip about everything, from whose goat wandered off into whose field, to which girl ran off with a boy who wasn't her cousin. But there's one thing they talk about in hushed tones, like even the wind might be listening. They call it the dying house. It's this two-story skeleton of a building near the river bend. Cracked walls, vines swallowing windows, and rusted gates that screech when the wind hits them. It was once a school, long before I was born. Burned down in the late 80s, they say. Some say it was an accident. Others whisper that a teacher locked herself in one of the upstairs rooms and set the place on fire with her students inside. They never found her body. Growing up, my friends and I would dare each other to go near it. Toss a stone at the wall, scratch our names on the door, run around it at night. Nothing ever happened. So, when they dare me to go inside and take a selfie at the second floor window, the one with shattered glass and the warped wooden frame, I shrugged and said yes. It was a dead night. No moon, just a smear of gray clouds like God had forgotten to paint the sky. The trees stood still. Even the dogs weren't barking. My phone battery was low, but it had just enough juice for a few photos. I remember stepping through the front door, pushing it open with my foot. The hinges let out a tired groan, like the building didn't want to be disturbed. Inside, it smelled like time had given up. Mold, dust, something like burnt fabric. I walked slowly, careful not to trip over the broken tiles and scattered wood. My torch flickered, but I wasn't scared. Not really. It was just a dead building. A shell. I kept telling myself that. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step like a heartbeat in a dead man's chest. The second floor was colder and quieter. Not a single sound. Just the faint crunch of grit beneath my shoes and the soft wheeze of my breath. The broken window waited at the end of the hallway. Framed in crumbling plaster, it looked out over the dark fields, the glass jagged and fractured like a puzzle no one could solve. I stood in front of it, held up my phone, and smiled. Click. Just one photo. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. Not until I got home. I was lying on my bed when I opened the gallery, expecting the usual blur, maybe a smudge of moonlight. But the picture was sharp. Too sharp. I was standing there. Yes, smiling like an idiot. But I wasn't alone. Behind me, in the window's reflection, was a girl. Not a shadow. Not a trick of light. A girl. She had pale skin, almost blue, like she'd been pulled out of a freezer. Her lips were cracked, the corners lifted in a faint, unnatural grin. And her eyes, those eyes, were pitch black. No whites, just pools of night. Her hair floated around her head as if she were underwater. But it was her hand that made me drop the phone. She was holding mine, not reaching, not touching, holding. I could see the fingers wrapped around my wrist. Thin, long, with blackened nails. I don't know how I didn't feel it at the time. My hand had been cold all night. I'd even rubbed it on my jeans while walking back. But I thought it was the chill. I thought wrong. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. I didn't want the jokes, the teasing. So I deleted the photo and tried to forget. But the thing is, I couldn't. Because every night after that, I started hearing tapping on my window. Slow, rhythmic, like someone knocking with their fingernails. Even when it wasn't windy. Even when I pulled the curtain tight and covered my head with a blanket, the tapping continued. One night I looked. I don't know why. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I thought it was a branch. But it wasn't. It was her. Her face pressed against the glass, hair drifting sideways, eyes staring into mine, and her hand, still reaching. The next morning, I packed up and left the village. Told my parents I needed to go to the city for work. They didn't ask too many questions. I didn't give them any answers. But a week later, I got a call from my friend Hassan, the same one who dared me to go inside. "Did you hear about Jamil?" he said, his voice shaking. Jamil had gone to the house, tried to take a video. His body was found 3 days later in the field behind it. The police said he probably fell from the second floor and crawled before collapsing. But Hassan said something else. They found glass in his hand, he whispered, like he'd smashed through a window. But there's no glass in that window anymore, right? Right, because it was all in her. They sealed the building after that, welded the door shut, put up signs. But you can't lock something like her away. Sometimes when I walk past mirrors, I check to see if she's there. Sometimes she is, and sometimes she smiles.